So the number 723 have meant a lot to me for a long time. I wore number 7 when I played baseball in college. My coach, Keith LeClair, wore number 23. The guy that I kind of grew up learning how to play the game from, Jack Leggett, who went from Western Carolina on to Clemson, now at USA Baseball, wore number 7. And forever, I've kind of done workouts and sets of 7s and 23s and all kinds of stuff, but they just mean a whole lot to me. And I started the 723 Foundation to act as my vehicle to do more for causes I care deeply about. One of those things is to tell the story of Keith LeClair.
I first heard about Keith through one of his summer league coaches up in New Hampshire, and he said this guy was a really good player, and he compared him to another kid who was going to the University of North Carolina at the time from the same hometown. So we eventually invited him to come down and try out on our team, no scholarship, and to be honest with you, he might be of all the 38 years of college coaching that I've had, the player, the kid that improved the most from the very beginning when he showed up to where he became as a player at the very end, and that's a heck of a compliment to how hard he worked and his discipline and how he went about his business during his time at Western.
You know, people were talking about his age and how young he was. He was the youngest coach to take a team to the regionals. He was the youngest coach. He broke a lot of barriers, and for us, he was just a great coach. We didn't care about his age, and I know when he got the job, they made a huge deal about that, but no one cared. We just loved him, and we loved him because how he treated us, the man he was, more than anything. And for me, it was, you know, he was just someone you wanted to be like, and that's hard. I mean, it really is hard because he was special, and there's not many people like him, and I've never met anyone like him, honestly, and I was truly blessed to play for him.
Well, Keith, during his time as a player and as a coach for me and as an opposing coach, we remained very close. We were see each other recruiting. We were friends. He was like a best friend. He was like a brother. He was like a son to me. And I was coaching in camp, teaching in camp, and I got a phone call from Lynn. And I was out on the backfield underneath those big oak trees behind Clemson's baseball field, and she told me that Keith had been diagnosed with ALS, and I remember sitting down in the bottom of one of those big oak trees and crying and talking to Lynn and you know, having a rough day with it.
One of the things I'll never forget is Coach LeClair came to one of my very first concerts. It was kind of close to Greenville, North Carolina, and I still remember that, and it meant so much to me that he cared enough to come and watch me do something after baseball and give me advice in that world, and to be honest with you, just to love me.
Anytime you have an illness, you can fight it. A lot of people, I think, fight stuff that don't know what's on the other side, and I believe he fought it just because he was a fighter, but he was okay when it was time to go because he knew how his faith and his life was going to go, and his family too. His family was okay. All right, it's time to let go.
I've told people before, you know, he was strong and he was living out his faith long before, you know, he got sick with ALS. Certainly, I know he talked about it and wrote about it in his devotions. I think, you know, his faith got deeper, but he was a great example for both his young players and coaches, you know, long before that.
My wife said, hey, Lynn LeClair called and left a message on our voicemail. You might want to check that. So I checked the message, and Lynn's message was, I don't know what you're doing, but Keith would like to see you, and if you can come to Greenville, that'd be great. And I called her back and I said, I'll see you tomorrow. And didn't know why I was going, other than I was honored to be asked. So I walk in, and at this point, Keith could only move his eyes. And so I walked in, and there he was on my left, and Lynn was just as normal as she could be. This is great. Do you remember this? It's great that you could come. Keith wanted to talk to you. I said, okay, that's great. I'd love to talk to him too. And then I find out that he can't talk. He can just talk with his eyes. He had there was a computer screen, and there was a laser, and there was a contact lens. And so I come sit down beside him, I give him a hug, say, I love you. And he's just looking at me, and his eyes are moving. And then he moves to the computer screen, and click. And this huge letter pops up. And I was like, holy shit. It appears that he has written me a letter with his eyes, and it's not a, hey, glad you're here, I love you, bye. It was a letter. And it took, he with his eye, he went through the letter, scrolling the page. And I started trying not to cry. And he was saying all these wonderful things about our relationship and the experience we had at Western Carolina and Coach Leggett. And I'm like, I am not worth the time that it took him to write this letter, because it took about 4 or 5 seconds for his eye to connect. And I don't know that I've ever been given a greater gift by anyone than the time that Keith took to tell me what he thought of me, and the failure of me to not make sure that he understood what he meant to me.
He developed so much more respect, like you said, affirmation of what we've all thought about him leading up to that. But I've never seen a stronger person. I've never seen a tougher person. I've never seen anybody go through something as tough as he did and handle it like he did. And that's why we're here.
As a head coach, you really try and invest in these young men to help build them and become independent and give them the tools they need to be successful as they move on, not in baseball, but in life. And I think everybody here is a testament to the tools that Coach LeClair and Coach Leggett gave us through the game of baseball.
I'm glad that you all came together. I'm glad that you're getting this time together. And I appreciate, too, just that you're remembering Keith. But I just appreciate that you guys are thinking of him and remembering him. And I know he thought of all of you as family. And he loved you. So do I.
You know, here's a guy from New Hampshire that came down to the mountains of North Carolina and became the best him that he could be. And in the process of doing that, he impacted so many lives. And he, on a daily basis, impacts not only me, Coach Leggett, and so many other players and coaches across college baseball, but also professional baseball and in life in general. And that is an awesome legacy. That is Keith LeClair.
We will get to Omaha. I can promise you that. And it won't be too long before that happens.